Nowhere is the homeless crisis more apparent than San Francisco. The Golden City spends hundreds of millions of dollars each year to address homelessness, yet the problem has exploded. Politicians promise to end the crisis.
We are going to eliminate homelessness by the end of this year.
Only to throw up their hands in defeat. So what went wrong? Why are some cities surrendering while others are reducing their homeless population? As in many cases, it boils down to governance. And nearly all the cities in crisis have one policy in common: housing first.
And the housing first model is premised on a very simple and almost intuitive idea that if you're homeless, the problem is that you need a house. So to solve homelessness, we should merely give people homes.
And now, this policy is being pushed from the top down.
The program, as I understand it, was started out in New York for the very severely chronically homeless, I believe in the 80s and 90s, and the Bush administration got a hold of it, implemented it in 2008. Under the next administration, it was rolled out as a one-size-fits-all solution.
And there's a lot of appeal to that idea that, look, this person is going to be on the street for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever it is. Why don't we just give them a house and not deal with all of the problems of picking them up, putting them in jail, putting them in a hospital, doing the rest of it? Let's find a central place where we can treat them. The problem with this theory is that if you look at the numbers of what's actually causing people to be homeless, it's overwhelmingly problems with mental health and drug addiction.
And housing first requires no sobriety or treatment in order to receive permanent housing.
If you're going to put somebody in a house and you don't provide any type of services for them, no treatment services, no case management, no anything for them, you just stick them in the houses so you don't have to look at them, and they can do what they want in there, how are we going to help them?
You want to draw someone in and you want to help them get off the street, right? So what they do is they just say, well, we're just going to allow the drugs anyway. Now you have all these people that are staying in shelters, they're staying in navigation centers, that are living in tent encampments, using massive quantities of meth, fentanyl, heroin, crack cocaine. The city sanctions their drug use within that city sanctioned site that your tax dollars and my tax dollars are paying for.
I mean, it brings tears to my eyes because it doesn't look at the individual, it doesn't look at what his or her potential is, and it doesn't help them develop that. To say that all we're going to do is help them aspire to be like that for the rest of their lives by sticking them in a house and not addressing, the issues is horrible. I think it's one of the most oppressive things we've done in the century, to be honest with you. And I'm so committed now to getting this changed.
From 2004 to 2014, San Francisco spent $2 billion on 3,000 new units of permanent housing at a cost of $666,000 per unit, more than double the median home price in America. That money could be spent so much more effectively.
It's shocking to me how little innovation we have because everything is permanent supportive housing or bust, and everything else in between is just keeping you alive until you get there. The problem is that half the people on the street aren't going to be allowed to realize that housing.
Los Angeles felt the impact of housing first immediately.
Reverend Andy Bales from the University Mission says he saw it coming. In 2014, the National Thought Process on Homelessness towards a housing first model. He says he saw donations to the missions on Skid Row plummet.
They used to give us $1 million shift to housing first only. We had another foundation that shifted that gave us $750,000.
And only now is intuition. This study, the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, showing since the recovery services decreased, homelessness went up more than 15% nationwide.
Compounding the problem, cities like Austin, Texas have legalized street treatment. Addicts poured out of shelters and treatment, back to where drugs, alcohol, and crime abound. In Austin, homeless deaths rose by 25% in a matter of months.
The number that should absolutely horrify Americans is that in LA, you have about 3 individuals die. And soldiers that we sent off to Iraq or Afghanistan.
First of all, it's no place to live, right? You're living in a tent or in a doorway. It is substandard, right, for anybody. This is not a way for a human this year.
And we are saying we don't let people camp on the streets because we think it's uncompassionate to push them off. It's not the right path. Places like San Diego and others say, listen, if we're going to push you off the streets, we're going to give you an alternative.
And according to people who have experienced homelessness firsthand, the root of the problem is mental illness and addiction, not housing.
Good morning. The meeting will come to order. Welcome to the Thursday, February 11th meeting of the Public Safety and Neighborhood Services Committee.
Agenda item 1 is a hearing on the San Francisco Recovery Summit Working Group report and findings.
I'd like to invite you to speak.
Good morning, everyone. Only 3 years ago today, I was leaning on a piece of cardboard in the doorway on Golden Gate High in the Tenderloin, severely addicted to heroin. I am living proof that there is a direct correlation between homelessness and substance use in the city. You can build all the housing and get everybody off the street housed, but if you're struggling with addiction or mental illness, you're just housed with drug addiction and mental illness. People say, oh, I lost my job and I became homeless. Then you have to ask them, why did you lose your job? I lost my job because I was going to work and shooting up in the bathroom on my lunch break, and then going back and sitting at my desk and passing out. From what I saw and the people that I encountered on the street, it's about 8 out of every 10 people that are visible that we see every day out on the street, living in tents, etc. They're struggling with addiction.
A recent study agreed over 75% of unsheltered have a drug or alcohol addiction, and a similar number also have a severe mental health disorder.
I was a child support officer for the city and county of San Francisco. It was a very stressful job, working with a lot of domestic violence victims. I became homeless because of my addiction, and I think a lot more people do become homeless because of addiction than what people think. You know, scientifically, we know that addiction is a disease. So my survival instincts got basically corrupted by these drugs. I also needed drugs in the same kind of way that I needed food. I would do anything to get them, making up lies to make money for my family while I was out there. And while I was on the street homeless, even then, I still thought I had some control over my life because all I really wanted in my addiction was the drugs. That's how powerful it is. Some people criticize me for some of the stuff that I say, but you know what? It can't just be all touchy-feely out there because being on the street is not touchy-feely. Cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles fail to realize the power of addiction and dangerously believe that addiction is a choice, not a disease. They condone this behavior and even help promote it.
One of the main policies that I feel like I'm constantly battling is the city's obsession with harm reduction.
The baseline goal of harm reduction is to keep you alive long enough in the hopes that you'll find recovery. But what it's morphed into in San Francisco is something different. It's really blurring the lines between harm reduction and then drug promotion at the same time.
How this is playing out on our streets is that instead of encouraging treatment, what we say, just keep on going.
Every program that has a program has to have a harm reduction policy within it.
One of those requirements is listed really down at the bottom, buried in there, is that you need to have clean drug paraphernalia available at all times for the residents of your drug rehab. They'll hand out pamphlets saying, here are some safe ways for you to use fentanyl so you don't overdose. Make sure you use a clean needle, make sure you clean the area that you're going to inject, make sure you register before you inject the needle inside your vein. And then at the end of all that, it'll say, enjoy your hobby. Here I am trying to kick heroin, man. And I'm in the drug rehab and I walk by the table every day with syringes and cookers and foil and straws and looking right at me and pipes. And you wonder why nobody's getting clean. We make it easier to get high, and it's so hard to get treatment in San Francisco that it hurts. And it's good to try.
70% increase over 2018 in overdose deaths. And during the pandemic, San Francisco went so far as to deliver free drugs and alcohol to homeless staying in hotel rooms that the city paid for. What happens when a city plays drug dealer? In 2020, the death rate among San Francisco homeless doubled. Many of these lives could have been saved. We know how to fix this problem. And the good news is that leaders across the country are doing just that.
Homelessness is not an issue in California, it is the issue. When I first took office, it quickly became clear to me that the search for consensus on the perfect thing to do was turning into non-action, not just here in the city, but up and down the entire state of California. I knew we had to do things differently. Allowing somebody to live on the sidewalk in our city streets is condemning them to die on the street. That was unacceptable. I do not allow tent encampments in San Diego on our sidewalks anymore. Every individual has a right to shelter. But if we provide that shelter, you have an obligation to use it. So I started a series of new bridge shelters in San Diego. It's a bridge between living on the street and being able to stand on your own 2 feet in that place of your own. I don't want you off the street for a night or for a week. But we want to help provide a safe, clean, sanitary, and supportive environment to get you off the streets for good.
If you've got a need, you're willing to work together, we can fix that 90% of the time. Before we had the bridge shelters, people had no choice. And that's what the judges, they wouldn't enforce the policy because there was no alternative to being homeless, because there was no place to start the process to get out the street. Everybody drank the housing first Kool-Aid, which I knew. It was a city council meeting and said, we're not going to do shelters anymore because we're going to do housing first. And I said on camera, while news agents outside, it's going to be a disaster. Because now people don't have any place to go to wait for that housing that may or may not ever come. Look at the billions and billions and billions of dollars being wasted right now in communities like Seattle, Portland, LA, San Francisco, San Jose. Billions of dollars by allowing people to kill themselves publicly. Where you can take that same money and reinvest in people on the street and say, you're better than this.
Bridge shelters are so much more than a shelter. Housing navigation, how to match you with resources to get that apartment of your own. Deal with mental health and substance abuse issues. Deal with job training issues. Bringing all of those services underneath one location. One of the changes that I made was establish a series of storage centers for personal belongings, free of charge. It has allowed our streets to be much cleaner, Again, it was the right thing to do by changing that dynamic, providing the incentive to do the right thing, but also the consequences if you do the wrong thing. I'm proud that we're the only urban county in California where homelessness has gone down the last 2 years. And there's nothing more I like than to interact with somebody who maybe was a skeptic of what we were doing in terms of putting up a bridge shelter or the help and support that we're given. They come back to me and say, Mr. Mayor, you know what? This worked out pretty well.
San Diego reduced its unsheltered homeless population by more than 20% in recent years. What does San Diego understand that its neighbors don't? That compaction must work with accountability, and that by banning street camping, we can incentivize people to seek better opportunities.
Back to the old days where you would have tent encampments. That was not helpful to the individuals, obviously, who were living on the streets. It's not helpful for your neighborhoods, for your business. That's the wrong approach. That's the failed status quo approach.
If I was on the street, you'd come up to me when I was sitting there hitting my heroin on my foil, and they said, hey, you said, hey, Tom, you want to go to rehab? You have a drug problem? My answer to you would have been, what drug problem? I'm just chilling on your head. That's what most people say. I agree with Mayor Faulkner on the issue of street camping, and that so long as we have a shelter bed that we can offer them, they should be obligated to take that shelter bed, at least for a day or two, right, to just try what it's like getting off the street.
In Austin, some individuals are taking action into their own hands, and Alan Graham believes there's a better approach.
We believe very powerfully that government should only play a subsidiary role to you and I in mitigating these profound human needs that our society explores. What we want to do is encourage people to move out of that transactional mentality that we're going to go build, $600 to $1 billion worth of housing over here, and we're going to put people in there, and it's going to solve this housing problem. It's not.
The people that we serve here are the hardest to house. The average age of the people who live here is 58 years old. The average length of time on the streets is 10 years. These are folks that genuinely, they never thought they would get off the streets. They were certain that they would be on the streets until they died. What we believe is that the forged family has to come around them, right? That it is all of us. And what happens in our culture today is that we've abdicated responsibility for that to the government, and we've said, city hall, state government, federal government, this is your problem to solve. And it's not, it's a human problem. It's all of us. When you decide on one way, you're limiting innovation, and that's really what's happened. Community first, the movement is an innovation. Lots of people thought that this model could never work. We continue to invest in relationship. We continue to show up for each other, and it turns out that community actually does work.
Community First Village gives homeless individuals something Housing First policies can never: a family. People holding each other accountable, supporting each other. By providing a sustainable ecosystem for these individuals to thrive in, drug addiction, alcohol use, and other harmful behaviors have plummeted.
How do you bring somebody into purposeful living? And when you look at what's happening inside this community, what they're being given is a community, organic farming operation, a blacksmithing shop, a wood shop, an art house, all the things that allow people to wake up in the morning and have purpose, whether it's to live here. You must pay rent. And do you know that we don't have a rent collection problem here, and never have, because everybody knows that they must pay rent. When you pay rent, it turns out that you're invested. You have skin in the game, and every human needs to have skin in the game, and that is what is lacking out there on the streets.
Incentives and accountability work. The Dell Fund in New York City has transformed tens of thousands of lives through its Ready, Willing, and Able program, which combines paid work, transitional housing, and comprehensive social services, including sobriety support. An independent study by Harvard University found that Ready, Willing, and Able graduates are 60% less likely to be convicted of a felony 3 years after exiting the program. Researchers at the University of Alabama tested a similar hypothesis by providing homeless with housing conditioned upon drug and alcohol treatment. They found that 64% of residents maintained sobriety. Instead of pumping billions of dollars into Housing First, it's time to use performance-based funding that rewards the programs that truly make a difference. For the price of one housing unit in San Francisco, we could build dozens of transitional shelters. Or fund proven treatment programs. Meanwhile, our elected officials must promote policies that address the root causes of homelessness.
What I think everybody's aim should be is this: self-sufficiency. We don't want people in this perpetual cycle. We want financial independence. We want emotional independence. We want independence that's perhaps free of substance that's keeping them down.
We always told that we're not the most compassionate individuals in the world. We take the compassionate approach by making it happen for people. And making it happen also means sometimes telling them no. But what we don't do is we don't give up on anyone. No matter what they do, how they do it, we're going to be there for them. That's what keeps us going and keeps us moving toward whether we have no money or not, we will still do this work.
Homelessness is a humanitarian crisis, but there are solutions. By denying the solutions, we excuse ourselves from making hard choices that can transform lives. It's easy to hand someone an apartment key and think that the problem is solved. It's hard work getting them to treatment, holding them accountable, and helping them return to a productive, safe, and healthy life. But that work must be done if we truly care for the most vulnerable among us.
Good morning. My name is Steve Adami, and thank you for joining us today. I've probably watched this documentary 10 times, and it doesn't get any easier in time. You know, in my personal life, I do work with adult probation department. I've also spent a couple decades of my life in and out of jail, prison, addicted to drugs, and homeless. And what I see going on in San Francisco is nothing short of a tragedy. That we no longer ask people or help people become their best. We allow people to be their worst. And allowing people to live like that is not compassionate. It's extremely harmful. So I'm going to invite up 4 people that were in the documentary. We're going to have some questions. We're going to have some dialogue. And then I'm going to introduce my co-host, Victoria Oyster.
Good morning, everybody. Like Steve, I too have struggled many years with addiction. At the time of my indictment with the feds for drug dealing, I had been using meth more years in my life than I hadn't. And what I can tell you is that the day that I stopped using drugs, my life began to be better. And I was given that opportunity to get better, even when I didn't even know it was possible to do so. I'd like to invite our panel. Hello. I'm just having my break here. Okay, Erica Sandberg.
So we're going to start by letting the panelists. We're short. We have 45 minutes and a lot of stuff to cover. So, where's Richard? I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself, please. Maybe like 45 seconds. I want to get through this stuff quickly because I want to get to the. We decided stop going along with the status quo and to start challenging the system as it stands. Last week, we launched the city's first abstinence-based therapeutic teaching community with two members of the panel today, Positive Directions Equals Change, Craig Johnson and Cedric Akbar, as a safe place for people that could not stay clean anywhere else in the city. We're going to continue to do the same about what's going on in the streets of San Francisco. So, Tom, we'll start with you, and we'll write down the line.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Tom Wolf. I'm a recovery advocate, and 3.5 years ago, I was homeless, living on the streets of the Tenderloin, struggling with fentanyl addiction. I'm now in recovery, and I just try to promote recovery here in San Francisco because that's something that it seems like that we kind of forgotten about, and we need to bring that back into the conversation.
Eric Sandberg, I'm a reporter here in San Francisco, reported pretty heavily on these issues. Currently fighting the permanent supportive housing because supportive is a misnomer. There is no such thing as support within the system. And it's a recipe for disaster, and I think we're going to be seeing some pretty horrible things coming up.
My name is Craig Johnson. I'm a recovering addict and ex-convict. I have over 30 years of sobriety. I'm currently director of the TRP program, TRP Academy that we just started in San Francisco, and I'm founding member of Positive Directions Equals Change.
So I'm going to ask the first question. Feel free just to jump in. And you could describe firsthand kind of the gravity of the problem you see in our streets today.
I have to jump in. I think it's, what I tell people from out of town is that it is beyond imagination. Don't even try. Just don't even try to imagine, because you will not paint an accurate picture for yourself. The degradation that I see in our streets every day, every minute of the day, is like something out of a Bosch painting. If you know Bosch, that 14th century painter of hell. It is hell. And it is so unacceptable, and it's getting worse. We've seen it creep into other neighborhoods that never had these issues before. And we're seeing it. And it's shocking. And if you're not shocked by what you see, there's something seriously wrong. It is beyond unacceptable.
So look, I was on the streets in 2018, and the suffering now has deepened to a level that I had not ever witnessed previously. And it's because of the arrival of illicit fentanyl, which hit the streets in 2018 in San Francisco. It really has changed the game for a lot of people on the street, in addition to people that died on the street. And
But the problem with that is, when you look at that big community, who do you see?
Come on.
Who do you see? And that's what I got an issue with.
That's what they call genocide. And see, I guess the reason why San Francisco don't enforce genocide because it's not in the California Penal Code, but it is in the Federal Penal Code. And when you take a section of a population and you take a group of people and place them all together and allow them to die, that's called genocide. And that's very serious. Because when you look back and think about slavery, everybody thinks slavery was so horrible. But one thing about slaves, at least they ate. And the slave master made sure he took care of the slaves and made sure they wasn't on drugs and alcohol. And he made sure that they were going to get up and go work every day. I'm not saying slavery was good, but looking at this today, this is nothing but modern day slavery. It's the exact same thing that happened during slavery. And the only difference they're doing right now is giving them drugs to be able to, until they slowly die. And that's what has to really change. And then when you look at it, these policies that we have in place, see the same policies that kept slavery going are still around today. And then we have what we call so-called liberal people. I'm not going to point fingers at anyone because we are responsible for this. Because if you sit back and don't do nothing, you're responsible. If you don't say something, you're responsible. If you walk around it and walk over it every day, you're responsible. But the key thing here is about the policies that are continuing to be made in this city, and people really from their hearts thinking they're doing something good, but you really killing people.
It is the do-gooders, the people who pat themselves on the back and think and say, oh, I'm doing such a great job, look how awesome I am, I'm providing all of these services and all these good stuff, I'm handing over all this paraphernalia, I'm giving you all of this stuff. They are the murderers. And that's a freaking fact, because we're seeing that we're going to reach 1,000 people dead. 1,000 people in San Francisco alone.
So I'm gonna go out on a limb here, but I gotta say this. So we defunded the police. We took money from the police department and we gave it to DPH so they could provide more of the same. So they could provide more of the same. Money was supposed to be distributed to more diverse communities and allow them to be able to take care of the communities. That is not happening. Because if you don't follow the policy of DPH, then you're not eligible for funding. And they have some minimum qualifications that basically squeeze faith-based programs out, squeeze community-based programs out, squeeze mom and pop organizations out, because you have to have a contract with the city for at least 3 to 5 years in order to get funding. Now, how do you get that? How do you get that if there's no one providing technical assistance or any kind of service to help you move in that direction? It's not here. So guess what happens? We get more of the same. So all that money we holler about to go defund police with the DPH to do more of the same.
Thanks, Greg. I want to pull the conversation back to something you spoke about earlier, about self-determination and about accountability. It seems to me that the message in our community is that our people on the street are victims, and because they're victims, we can't ask or expect anything from them. Could you speak to that?
You use the term victims, right? But I mean, either we all victims or we all not victims, because those same victims are perpetrating on people. So I'm just saying, just to clarify that. So that's what we talk about accountability. Because if you look at them as victims, they're gonna stay victims and remain victims.
And what we know about a victim is they don't have to take responsibility for nothing, because they are victims. And what are we gonna do? We're gonna just create a whole community of disenfranchised people that are, or we're gonna try to start pushing people to be more accountable, start taking responsibility for their life, and make people take care of the things they need to take care of, and quit giving us words. I mean, you know, it's like they'll present reports to the city about they doing this, doing that. I step over somebody loaded. So the picture that I'm seeing every day don't match what the reports are saying. So something's wrong. And the only way they can hear us is to speak on it and say, you guys are not hearing us. You are not listening to us. You don't hear what we're saying. We got a problem. Y'all ain't addressing it. They're not addressing it. And the city has to step up. They really have to step up.
Tom, could you talk about recent experience with City Hotels?
Yeah, there's another bomb that's about to drop in the Tenderloin right now, in case you all don't know. So pandemic unemployment assistance ended September 4th. Most of the people that were living in shelter-in-place hotels were connected with that money all this time, and that money has stopped. So in about a month or less, all of them folks are going to be out of money, right? And if you want to know why there was a lot more drug dealing happening during the pandemic, part of that was because there was extra money in the Tenderloin, specifically in that neighborhood, because they were getting that PPA money. That money is now stopped. So we need to actually think about these things and prepare. What's going to happen on the street? There's going to be more mayhem and all that stuff. But this is also an opportunity for TPH and for other people in recovery to step up to the plate and say, look, now's the time. Your train of being able to buy drugs because you're getting $2,400 a month just ended. Now's the time for you to get clean. And so we have to create those opportunities and create those pathways for individuals to get those services, to get in recovery. Because that does not happen in San Francisco. Look, here's the reality. If you go to jail, I went to jail 6 times in a 3-month period. I was offered, I could have been into a rehab from county jail in 72 hours. I could have been in rehab. Did you know right now that if you're on the street, if there's no room that day when you line up at Health Right 360 to get a detox med, it can take you anywhere from 8 to 51 days to get on rehab. How are you supposed to get well? How are you supposed to get clean? How are you supposed to find recovery? And then when they do housing in the Tenderloin, I used to work at a realtor place right there on Church Street. I was a case manager. You know, guys that I worked with would walk out the door and they'd have one significant emotional event that day and they would relapse. Why? Because there were a dozen dealers standing outside that door offering heroin and fentanyl and all that. How do we expect anyone to stay clean in this city if this is the kind of environment that we perpetuate?
I got a question for Cedric. Probably not fair to ask, but I'm gonna ask you anyway. Why is it that San Francisco allows people to sell drugs? I mean, nobody wants to address the reality. We have a couple of programs in the Tenderloin. I've driven through with my coworkers. There's like 8 people on each corner selling drugs, and nobody does anything about it. And then we want to complain that there's 713 overdose deaths last year. And the solution to our problem? More of the same. Narcan. We're always on the defense. All of us, except Erica, maybe she never got caught, but the rest of us have all been in jail, been to prison, and what it does is somebody asked us to be the best of ourselves. It wasn't easy, it wasn't fun, but it worked out because people loved us until we could love ourselves.
The funny thing is, jail used to be a detox. Now it's not a detox. You know, they'll let you go. You know, nobody stays in jail anymore. They don't want nobody in jail. So they'll bust them and let them go. But then sometimes when you want to get some rest, you say, let me catch a case, I can go down and get me some sleep and clean up a little bit, get my head on straight, and get on back out there. They didn't mess that up. They kick the thing out even over.
Will you and Cedric answer the question? I want to know why it's okay to legally sell drugs in San Francisco. There is a penal code, right? I might be wrong unless the law has changed. People are dying on the street.
The same reason why they had the law made crack, go to penitentiary for 10 years, and powder to get probation. Same reason.
And all other guys were quick talking about earlier about when you become police departments, you take a movement when black people are getting abused by the police. You take that movement to defund the police department, but the money didn't go to education on how to treat African American people or people of color. The money defunded, and they gave it to the Department of Public Health, talking about about to say to address drug addiction. But what we have gotten across the country, and even in San Francisco, is a whole place of lawlessness. People can drive however they want to. You don't have any problem. People walk in stores, take everything. And the only thing who's going to suffer from this is mostly poor people, because when you don't have stores in your community, you have nowhere to go buy anything. Place packages on porches, the rich can afford that. If their package gets stolen, it's nothing to them. It don't mean nothing to them. But if a poor person has even do online shopping, their packages get stolen, their ass out. But the bottom line is, it's just this whole thing of lawlessness now, where you can't touch anybody, you can't say anything to anyone. We have gone complete opposite the other end. We use situations like African Americans getting beat by police, which has turned into this today, which we've forgotten all about that now. We've forgotten about how, I still think we should coincide together. We still need to protect our community with however way that may look. But what we need to learn how to do is learn how to live together with one another. What we need to be teaching each other is about understanding each other's culture, understanding how to live together and how to work together. About what it has turned into. It goes along with drug dealing and everything else, which really makes no sense, because the city is playing right in the hands of it. You take police, you take everything out of a position where they can't do anything anymore, where their hands are tied. And if I was the police, I wouldn't do anything anyway. Now we're on an attack. I hear this whole city of San Francisco is on attack against any law enforcement. They call them probation law enforcement. I haven't seen sheriff, I haven't seen probation department, I've never seen any of them in all my years arrest anyone. But yet and still, what I've been seeing is that these particular departments of the city have been helping and trying to reach out and help the community. But on the other hand, it's still allowing people to come from outside of the city who are not from San Francisco to sell their drugs and get slapped on the hand. And I'm not going to just place it all on the drug dealers, because they're allowed to do it. And they also, the city has created some people to be able to spend their money on, just like what Tom was talking about. The whole thing is basically, goes back again, it's just slavery to keep people down. I always looked at GA in San Francisco. It used to be the first and 15. It's kind of like they get the money, throw it into the poor communities, let all of them fight over it and whatever it is, and then I pick different people to take them to custody, and now it's your turn to go to custody. And it's just that vicious cycle, and it's not really to people get away. It's not people to be able to stand up on their 2 feet at all. It's not meant that way. So, to that question, see, it's like a loaded question, but the point is that, it's this lawlessness in the city, period. And really across the country, it ain't just in San Francisco, it's everywhere.
And I just go back to when Mayor, we had treatment on demand. At that time, there was all kinds of services in the community that were culture specific, that were in the neighborhoods, and they worked for people. When they shifted to the housing first thing and started just addressing homelessness, all those programs got cut. And so it had an effect. So now we focus on homeless people, but we don't focus on whitey homeless. And we don't talk about whitey homeless. We just say they homeless. That's all we say, they homeless. But again, how are we really addressing the problem if we're only looking at the symptom?
So can I just real quickly address why people deal drugs on our street? Drug normalization. It has absolutely, there's been a philosophy that really drugs aren't that bad, right? But not that bad for who? Do you think that people who are making the decisions are out on the street rolling around in their own filth? No, they may smoke some weed. And by the way, you're right. I was an alcoholic. He died of alcoholism. His father did it, and his father did before him, and my sister was a heroin addict. So I may not know, but it touches everybody. But the whole idea that hard drugs, heroin, fentanyl, meth, you name it, is just a lifestyle. That's why changed. We have changed the script. Now it's okay. That's why. Because the dealers are just providing a service.
Yeah, Eric, every morning I watch Tenderloin and South Market, and I see parents with their children on the way to school. And I think, what are our babies learning? And what are they going to do? So we've talked, the problem's huge. So what is the solution? Obviously, the things in place right now are not working. So what could work?
Policy change.
Right, policy change, right. So,
Forcing policy change.
okay. So you know, there's 5 cities in Europe that have very similar issues out here. Amsterdam is one of them. When you hear Amsterdam, all you think about, oh, drugs are legal there. But they're actually not. They actually broke up their open drug scenes because their department finally sat down with their police department and they started cooperating and working together to do something meaningful. Meeting people on the street with street outreach, methadone on the spot, shelter and services, and at the same time breaking up the open-air drug dealing that was happening in that city. They did it in Zurich too. So I know we're not Europe, but I'm just saying that, look, right now, things are not good as far as relationships go with any kind of service provider in the city and law enforcement. That needs to change because we're all in this together and it requires the same. Everybody must sit down. That means the police is going to have to come off their high horse and sit down and work with community service providers. And service providers are going to have to sit down with them because guess what? Neither one of them is going away. They're here. So we all need, and they're the ones that are out on the street whether we like it or not. So we're going to have to find a way to all work together to address this problem in a sensible way where we can get people the services they need on the spot, real treatment on demand, where you can be in detox by the end of the day. You can be in detox. Where repeat offending drug dealers, and I sat on the drug dealing task force in San Francisco. This was one of our recommendations, where repeat offending drug dealers have real sanctions, right? It's a way to send a message that, look, we're going to make it harder for people to get high, and then make it easier for people to get treatment. It's actually pretty simple, but we all need to come away from our ideologies that we're stuck in and sit down and come to the middle and work together.
And we as a community need to force policy change. Not ask for policy change, but really press and push policy change.
Which policies?
I can tell you in town.
Start with one. Let's go. Come on.
Ask a real question. A real question. And if you can answer this, I'd be so excited. I have been studying this since 2007. Treatment on demand was by law in 2004. Harm reduction was caused or created in an AIDS epidemic. And now, how many times 200 people in a navigation center were caught with Narcan? No record of any resources given. We have 290 programs. The Department of Public Health does not have a case manager ratio to clients and where is that money going? Wiener just put $268 million in California for mental health, $30 million for children. Where is it in our schools? We have turned San Francisco into a nonprofit prison complex system. Unhoused and unsheltered people. $15 million into the hot team. Their key manager ratio in the Tenderloin for 9,711 was 2. For 3 zip hotels in Union Square, 2. For the jail, 2 in both males. This is it's insane. In 2012, we had 70% of our mental health services. Behavioral health services were given their pay slips. We have not recovered those services. And since 2014, when HSH took resources away from the police and the nonprofits, which were done in a culturally responsive, therapeutic way, it's gone. And that increased our homeless by 300%. You can walk into Health Right 360, you'll see all brown, black men and no resources. And I just want to agenda line, I see 4 people died at night. And genocide ain't the word. I'm waiting to wake up one morning and have fentanyl. I have about 100 people dead. It's not only genocide, it's chemical warfare. And we're putting the users are the cheese and the rats. We just keep feeding them. And when you get sick, we'll just pop you with Narcan. What the hell is wrong with this? This is really upset. I'm 17 years and sober. I've been homeless for 5 years. I worked in the jails. I worked in the psych wards. I worked at Swords and Plowshares. This ain't no game. I didn't get here by not getting self-agency back. I was broken. We need to help people get their self-agency back. That doesn't mean giving them a house so they can die.
Steve.
Thank you for bringing out
What is your name? What is your name?
Liza, I just have a question. You said that when they took the money from the police, that they gave it to who?
HSH, our Department of Homelessness.
And what happened to that money?
300%, they have no.
No, but I'm talking about what happened to the money.
On September 24th, Jeff Kaczynski got $15 million. I found out during COVID, it was a different medical place outside of San Francisco. It's some medical place, like, sorry, I just went blank. $15 million to the hot team. 4 months, they went 2 people.
So, okay, I just want to make sure, because some of that money was supposed to be going to African American agencies and back to the community. The American community hasn't gotten that Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Speaking to the mic now. I'm part of the Northern California Commission on Psychiatric Resources, and I am the mother of someone who is seriously, has a severe psychotic disorder that luckily is not homeless. Our Department of Health has abandoned this population, and people who have psychotic disorders and a substance abuse disorder cannot just get well by being given a house. Right. My son was given, fortunately, a house. Without me, he would be dead. And the jail, the people who have psychotic disorders in the jail, I've been marrying a young woman who's got bipolar disorder, not a substance abuser. She's been in jail since April because there are no treatment facilities. That's right. So our Department of Health has to be held accountable for actually providing treatment.
Okay, I need to respond. I would like to challenge everybody here. How much what is the budget for the Department of Public Health? Can you just take a wild guess? Does anybody have a wild guess? The annual budget. How much?
It's right currently 238 for the mental health, 238 million for mental health SF.
$2.3 billion annual budget for Department of Public Health, and we cannot provide psychiatric assistance to people who need it. We can't give them abstinence-based counseling. I swear, like bullshit. This is insanity. It is not a insanity.
What's the solution?
Not for the people, by the people, for the people, of the people. We need to sit in front of City Hall and take them.
Oh, yeah, let's go to I think my last question was what policy can
I think one of the policies that was talked about in the movie was the housing first policy, right? And you need to change that more to a shelter first policy.
Or even, I think people misconstrue what housing first means, because when people, I've been meetings like housing first, and I don't want to see anybody homeless. Should housing come before helping people get well? Should it maybe be community first, maybe treatment first, maybe health first, at the cost to get one person the street when we could serve, at the cost of getting one person off the street, when we could serve more to help give people back their lives. Our focus, my team, my peers, we focus on people in the justice system. That is kind of our carve out, right? I work for the adult probation department. And I often hear this, like, that think anybody in county jail needs to exit the jail to their own apartment. And I actually just happen to disagree. I don't think people should be homeless. But our ultimate goal should be to give people back their lives so they can exit the system forever and be independent, be autonomous, to be able to organize against systems that have oppressed them for decades. And we don't do that. We're just creating a greater state of dependency where people are not able to have autonomy in their own decision making. And I don't think it's a city agency or a city department or a government agency that will solve that problem. It's the community that will solve that problem. I think the greatest challenge we face is that nobody listens to the community. They show up. Cedric said it's perfect. I will send out the link to what he said at City Hall one day. People want to pose and take pictures with you, but they don't want to listen to what you have to say. They know what's better for your community than you. I use Cedric and Craig as an example because they've been doing this work for 30 years, and this program we just launched was labor hell. And they still tried to stop it. They couldn't believe we got the doors open in 6 weeks, and when they found out, they called us. They're like, wait a minute, how did this happen so quickly? And I was like, we got the money, I got amazing people that work around me that are quick. And in an abstinence-based program that holds 84 men, they put 30 people in the program in less than 3 weeks. And you go to other programs in the city that are half empty. It's because the culture of the program. With those guys, you feel like you're at home. You feel like your mom, dad, brother, sister at one point in your life, if your life was ever decent, it hasn't been that way for everybody. And that's what helps people get well. But I do want to challenge everyone. My colleague Destiny Pledge is overseeing a housing work group for justice-involved adults. We have held several focus groups. We are going to be launching a survey soon. And if you'd like to join that work group, I'd offer for you to check in with her afterwards. We're in another crazy debate right now. We're trying to launch a Reentry Stabilization Center. Last year we housed 600 justice-involved adults. We reduced homelessness by 77,000 bed nights. Destiny oversaw an entire portfolio of that. And it's a 20-bed stabilization unit that another city department doesn't think a law enforcement agency should be funding. I say, well, we just contract funding. People like Cedric, Craig, Tom, and others run these programs. So if you believe in people like we believe in people, and you believe people can actually change, please connect with Destiny and be part of this movement as we continue to challenge the status quo. What's happening in the Tenderloin is ridiculous. So I want to ask one final question to all the panelists. We got like 5 minutes.
Can we let that gentleman here? Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I just, I wanted to ask specifically about, harm reduction, how the Department of Health is, some information about the policies of what the Department of Health is doing regarding harm reduction and the funding behind it. And also the follow-up question to that is like, who do we talk to? Do we call our supervisor? Where's the proactive? What can we do proactive?
That's a great question. It's like you scripted you. So what is the next step?
No, but I thank you for the help too. Is it help or is it question?
I was gonna make a statement.
Go and make a statement, then we gonna go, because we got
Richard, come on up, man. We got a clock, Richard. It's 11:35, man. That might be going to 11:36.
Everybody in here is my friends.
Introduce yourself, Richard.
My name is Richard Bill, Director of Transition Housing, Particular Housing Planning. And I run 4 programs for adult probation department. I have a number of units, 50 units at the Drake Hotel, the Hart Hotel, and the Sheraton Hotel on 6th Street. And I've been working with these guys, Cedric, Craig, we go back over 25 years. You know, and 25 years ago, San Francisco was the gold standard when it came to providing subsidies street. It has been free clinics, Glide, then we had faith-based programs. We had 12-step programs. We had culturally specific programs. We had programs in Western District. We had programs, Jelani Street, men's programs. And then the RFP came out, and like they said, Housing First came out and wiped all those programs away. Took away all the funding. And so now we know in 2016 that the RFP came out, they need to come out with another RFP that can refund those programs that are proven to work. Faith-based programs do work. Some people need faith-based programs. Some people need 12-step programs, 12-step work. And guess what? People do get clean in the Tenderloin. I went to the Asylum Center, I went to St. Anthony's program, and I got at 23rd Street, which is the relative place. I stayed there 3.5 years. I've been clean ever since. No one else. So going to support groups, staying connected to AA, NA, staying connected to people that were doing the same thing that I was doing. And that's why when Steve and them, and they asked me to speak and talk about giving me abstinence-based programs, they wanted to do it in the 3rd Street, and they still need it on 3rd Street. They need it in the Tenderloin, and they need it in the Fillmore. And I support positive direction. I support Steve, and I support anybody that's doing the right thing for the people in recovery. Because CBS is stop using drugs, losing desire to use, and find a new way to live. The message is hope, and the promise is freedom. And hope still comes from the experience. Let's get this started, y'all. Thank y'all.
We got 5 minutes left. You guys, go ahead. Tell me quick. We want to give closing remarks for these guys. We will continue this dialogue. We're doing a virtual event on October 3rd with both sides of the conversation, and it'll be a 3-hour event, and everybody will have a chance to weigh in. So why don't you go ahead, and we're going to give closing remarks.
I'm Pastor Paul from the Gospel Temple here in San Francisco. I just had a question. With some of the information that's been brought forth, why not any of this information being taken to the grand jury?
Good question. Nothing happened. It's nothing happened. It goes to the recommendations. In the back. California auditor, audited the department for 3 years running and found malfeasance, reported on criminality. Nothing happened. Nothing happened. I want to say the energy in this room, the number of people in this room, if you would show up, if you would show up and say something home, if you would go and have these stupid meetings, if you would go to the San Francisco Mental Health Commission meetings, all this nonsense, where they talk out of all sides of their mouth, where there's $1.1 billion going where? I mean, my organization, NCCPR, we have a table, we have a small grant to follow the money. Find out where the hell is it? Where we show up, all of us.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Remarks that will come from these guys. We're going to have a seat right here.
Okay, so my closing remark is to read, listen to the media, listen to what they're saying, and question. I am a member of the media, and what I see is appalling. Shallow reporting. Demand more.
What I'll say is that in the end, we've got to find a way to work together. Harm reduction clearly plays a role nationwide. It's part of the federal standard. So is Housing First. We need to find a way to carve out a space for those who want abstinence-based treatment. We need to find a way to carve out a space to get people off the street and into drug and mental health treatment as opposed to just a hotel. Which, I can just tell you, I think we all know that it's not working out as great as they tout that it does. That's it.
My closing remark is, listen to the people that I serve.
Community to force policy change. Enforce it, not ask for it.
So I am here to, we got a few minutes, I want to let people make some comments, I want to say thank you for coming, come on up if you want to make comments. We are closing out the event, but I just want to say thank you for being here, and October 3rd, if you get my emails, you don't block my emails, you can get an invite from me, and but feel free to come up, grab the mic, and say what you guys say, we're going to listen. Thank you.
Now, you mentioned faith-based organizations. I'm going to give you two right now. Call Michael Pappas at SF San Francisco Interfaith Council. They work on all kinds of justice issues. Also, Catholic nationwide is called Faith in the Accidents Bay Area. Florida is in Trenton. We go grassroots. 1 to 1. You want to be safe? All right, come on up.
Okay, this is a comment, it's more of a question. I'm just really confused as to why probation only provides housing for places like in the Drake, the Heart, in the Tenderloin. I feel like that just puts clients back in that cycle, you know, and I just wanted to know, like, why is that?
I mean, it's a good question. I think there's a couple of reasons why. One is availability. It's a good question, but some of it has to do with availability. And we do fund programs. We fund a couple on Oak Street, which are by Golden Gate Park. But you know,
very few.
Correct.
And there's more right in the Tenderloin, and I don't think that makes any sense at all.
So if you have recommendations that you know some buildings that are not in Tenderloin that are available, please contact me. We'll take a look at it. What happens often in these situations is you enter into a contract with somebody and you agree with space, and you know it's not perfect, but it's a step in the right direction. So I do appreciate it, but
I can't speak about probation, but what I can speak about is this city, they don't allow programs to be in their neighborhood.
That's right.
See, that's the other side of it. Because if you have 290s, if you have sex offenders, if you have people with mental health, they don't want it next door to them. Every time, wherever we are, because we try to make sure we're not in the Tenderloin, the only place we really can have programs is in Bayview, because I guess the community is so torn apart. But when we go in areas like that, we get a fight against the community. Then they have this other law where you have to present it to the community and let the community know. So if I present myself as African American, say I'm on a program with 1,000 white people, they're gonna shut it down because they don't know me. They don't know what we bring. They want to keep their community safe, as if, you know, Tenderloin don't keep their community safe. But that's a lot of it too. And that's why, like when people are saying this, why you have to go up and stand up for what you want. You know, we can't just put it on there, but that's where all the availability is always in the damn Tenderloin, instead of having it in the community. Yeah.
I just want to say thank you to all the panelists. Definitely learned a lot. My name is Raymond Woodley. I was born and raised in the Bayview. Work with YC. Work with the Reentry team on violence prevention. And I definitely want to say just having this chance to become a violence prevention convener and jumping in this. I think the accountability part is a real issue. It seems like everybody always want to take the credit when good shit happens. But the minute somebody dies on the street, nobody don't see take accountability for that. I think that's a city thing and community thing for sure. And it's just definitely hurtful to see in my generation. You know, I see a lot of my friends and my friends I grew up with in the Tenderloin, and it's just devastating. So, another thing is collaborative efforts. Everybody working in silos. That's what I've been seeing doing this work. Like I said, I'm a new generation, and I see a lot of people working separately. And that's just been my biggest challenge, trying to get people to convene and work with each other. I think that's a big piece with a lot of this community work is networking. Everybody's in here, everybody got a program out here, everybody's doing this, doing that. The minute we don't get to know each other and network, somebody dies. Somebody else will lose their life. I think that's the accountability part is big, the networking part is big. This is what this is meant for. Get out here and talk to each other, meet each other, figure out what can we implement and work with each other and get the work done. Thank you. Appreciate it. Another thing, both sides of the conversation, my guy right here, John Henry, is a good platform. You get on there, go on the platform, talk about, the work you do on the services you have. He has a lot of following. We definitely be needing a lot of the platforms, so we can definitely showcase what services and what resources are out there. Thank you too.
Yeah, my name is Steve Ladon. I'm Steve Clark. What I wanted to say was, I got some good information in here with regards to money and all that. I haven't seen, and I ain't seen a whole lot since I've been in this circle of recovery. That's what I'm in. But what the gentleman just said, we need to, if we come together and do some marching and get up in that city hall, because I've seen that with my own eyes. I have been a part of a couple things, and we made some stuff work because we was on them stairs, we was demanding some things, we was doing something, but we was all together, and they listened. Craig said, community make policies. People need to force policy. So what we gotta do, like the brother just said, is we gotta, Steve, we gotta get all the information, all the different programs up in here. We need to come together, we need to meet, money at least one time money, and then we need to get about what she was talking about. Erica, get about that DPH $1 billion money and make it take a piece. You gotta take a bite out of the apple, because what we do is we do we make some things work. But we gotta march. We gotta step up, we gotta march. We gotta go shake Victoria, City Hall, all together, all of us, at the appropriate times. That's all I got to say.
I'm not gonna talk all anything, but I'm gonna speak on some observations. And I'm not anybody, but I do got 30 years experience of being involved with my father. What I'm saying is you gotta be able to give people a straight answer sometimes. Sometimes I'll just be I won't say oh, but I'll call, ask for resources, and I'll get another question. And just imagine what somebody who's on drugs or who got mental health problems, imagine what they're going through. They make all these calls and they get other questions and not get straight answers. We got to be able to start giving people straight answers. And then also, just to the black people in the room, specifically, I do see the benefits of harm reduction, but watch out for that though, because harm reduction can be that they keeping black people as patients and clients and keeping them in the system and not moving them to recovery. Right? That's a trap in harm reduction. And from what I can kind of see, that's how it's being used. Another thing is, I said I got 30 years experience in this. I see a lot of conferences and things, but I don't really see the community engagement with each other. And it's not just the black organizations. Sometimes it's the white ones too. You go up to their office and have Muhammad Gandhi and Martin Luther King and all the people on the walls, but the attitude is like something out of non-security. And a lot of the organizations don't really talk with each other. So, how are we going to bring back the village if we're not talking with each other outside of the meetings? I mean, you ask somebody for a brochure. I understand. Right? So, it's those basic things. And the last thing I'll
the same is, and the brother did speak to it, this part of my 30-year experience, is, the ministry needs to be a part of the recovery. Recovery needs to be more in the conversation. Because I've been to some meetings myself, and I hear about housing and homelessness, how we can stop the homelessness, but you can't stop the homelessness if you don't deal with recovery. And the ministry part is important because that's what wheels people in. So I'm seeing it work. And that's what, music calms the savage beast within people. So we got to bring the church, not just the church, but ministry. Everybody got different religions. But yeah, y'all know some of y'all don't want to hear me talk. So I got tired of talking anyway. But that's what we do.
Just want to take a couple of minutes. I'm John Henry, Executive Director of Both Sides Conversation. We're one of the media outlets. We're trying to bring this education and awareness to our communities. Thank you for being about Kelly, the leadership of Steve. We are one of the organizations that are part of the They Keep Their Initiative. I am one of the people that's going to be on the accountability commission. We start to do assessments of these programs. We've already started assessments and debating throughout the city. Every meeting that I go to, I continue to hear about where's the money, where's the organization doing the work. So that's going to be part of our job and our team doing some of these assessments with the Human Rights Commission, as well as our community leadership. So we are doing a lot of behind-the-scenes assessments on organizations, and everyone on here that spoke, just from the short survey and assessment that we've already done with a number of the community-led organizations, we have found so many flaws. Some of them have been able to make corrections, to change and make their processes and their follow-up and information a little bit better. But everybody in here has organizations that are doing work. We need to get these services to our people. We are in a crisis, not just in substance use, mental health, violence, and everything. We need to get this information out to the community. And it's very, very important because a lot of times what I'm finding in our assessments when it comes to outreach with community organizations, typically the information is going to that network. So organizations are using their customer data bank, their email services, and they're calling that outreach. That is not outreach. Outreach is information for all community people that are affected, and we have to do a better job on that as well. But I'm looking forward to connecting with all organizations, and I heard Craig, whenever it's funding, there's a lot of people organizing, coming together, and then once the funding starts rolling out, people just disappear. So we're going to be holding people accountable. We'll be doing the assessments on these organizations to see who's really having the impact, and definitely we'll be having a conversation with those organizations and see what we can do to support them or have them remove those funds. So looking forward to connecting with you all.
So thank you guys for joining us for the panel and the film. Thank you to the panel for coming and sharing your thoughts and your expertise. Have a great afternoon.
So we're going to be doing a lot. We on the accountability board. Let me turn this off.